Elon Musk's life was always busy with meetings, deadlines, and big projects, but that morning he just wanted something simple. He walked into a quiet cafe in Palo Alto, hoping for a few peaceful moments. No reporters, no fans, just a calm spot to drink his coffee and relax. "Just a regular coffee," he told the cashier, expecting nothing unusual. As he looked around the room, the soft chatter of other customers faded into the background. When he reached for his wallet, he noticed the young cashier staring at him. Her eyes were fixed on him. Elon raised an eyebrow, feeling like something was off. Her dark, intense eyes seemed to see right through him. "You've been looking for your real self for years, haven't you?" she suddenly asked, her voice quiet but serious. The question hung in the air, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Elon blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. Was this some kind of joke? He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Excuse me?" he finally asked, the words slipping out in disbelief. She didn't break eye contact. "You've been chasing something for so long, haven't you? Something you can't quite put your finger on." Elon's heart skipped a beat. He took a step closer, trying to make sense of the situation. "I don't know what you mean," he said, half intrigued, half wary. The cashier's lips curled into a small, almost sad smile. "You will soon." The moment Elon stepped forward, she took a breath, almost as though preparing herself. "Do you know who I am?" she asked, her voice now softer, but the question was no less pointed. Elon looked at her more closely, but there was nothing familiar about her. She didn't appear to be one of his regular staff or anyone from his circles. "I don't—" he started, but she cut him off. "I'm your sister," she said simply, her eyes locking with his. "Your half-sister, the one your father never told you about." Elon's breath caught in his throat. The words were like a punch to the gut. His mind scrambled to make sense of what she was saying. He had no memory of a sister, no recollection of a hidden family member. "My father?" Elon repeated, the question hanging in the air. "Yes, he kept me from you," she said, her voice tinged with a mixture of bitterness and sorrow. "I've spent years trying to find you. You've been looking for yourself, for something real. I'm the missing piece." Elon's mind raced. He tried to process what she was saying. This couldn't be true, could it? How could he not have known about her? His father, who never mentioned anything like this. And then she did something that would change everything. From behind the counter, she pulled out a small worn box and placed it on the counter in front of him. "This," she said, "is yours." Elon stared at the box, feeling a strange mix of dread and curiosity. It was old, the wood weathered with age, the kind of box you would expect to find in the attic of a family home that had seen generations pass through it. "Open it," she urged, her voice firm, yet calm. Elon hesitated for a moment, his hand hovering over the box. He wasn't sure what he was expecting, something that could confirm her story or something that would tear it all apart. But he knew he had to open it. The tension in the air was thick, and this moment felt far too significant to ignore. Slowly, he lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in velvet, was an old photograph and a small, intricately carved pendant. The photo showed a younger version of his father, a man Elon knew as strict and calculating, holding a child, her. The woman in the picture was unmistakably his half-sister, her face smiling up at the camera. Elon's heart pounded. The photograph felt like a cruel reminder of everything he hadn't been told, but it was the pendant that caught his eye. It was something he had seen before, though it seemed so long ago. It was a family heirloom, passed down through generations, a symbol that only his family knew about. He recognized it immediately. "This is real," Elon muttered to himself. "But why?" She sighed, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I don't know why he kept it from you, but I know that you've been searching for something your whole life. This is the key." Elon stared at the heirloom in his hand, unable to tear his gaze away. The weight of the pendant seemed symbolic, as if it were a link to something greater, something hidden. He could feel the weight of his father's secrets pressing down on him. "Why now?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. "Why tell me this now, after all these years?" She took a deep breath. "Because you deserve to know the truth. You've built an empire, but you've never known your roots. You don't understand the full picture." The truth about your family, about why your father was who he was, is buried deep within this. Elon's mind raced, the words swirling around him like a storm. He wanted to demand more, to question everything she was saying, but a deep part of him knew that what she was telling him made sense. The puzzle pieces were slowly coming together in his mind. "And what about you?" Elon asked, his voice quiet. "Where have you been all this time?" She looked away, her face briefly clouded with emotion. "I've been searching for you. For years. Your father made sure we were kept apart, but I couldn't forget. And now that I've found you, I need you to understand something." Elon raised an eyebrow, sensing that this wasn't just about family secrets anymore. There was something bigger at play. "I'm not just here to tell you about your past," she said. "I'm here because there's something I need from you." Elon's pulse quickened. He could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on him. This wasn't just a casual revelation, it was the beginning of something much bigger. His life, his entire world, was about to be turned upside down. "What do you need from me?" he asked, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts racing in his head. She took a deep breath. "I need you to help me uncover the full story, the truth about our father's business dealings, the real reason why he kept us apart and why he built the empire the way he did. There's something much darker buried in all of it, something you need to know before it's too late." Elon's mind reeled. He had always known his father's empire was built on secrets. But this was a whole new level. What had he gotten himself into? "Are you saying I've been living a lie?" Elon asked quietly, the words heavy with disbelief. She nodded slowly. "In a way, yes, but the truth will set you free. You've been searching for something real. This is it." The air in the cafe grew heavier with every word that passed between them. Elon was still holding the heirloom in his hand, but now the weight felt more symbolic than ever. His mind raced, trying to piece together what was real and what had been hidden from him for so long. "Do you have any idea what's going on here?" he asked, looking at his half-sister. His voice was quiet, almost as though speaking too loudly might break the fragile moment they were sharing. She smiled faintly, her gaze softening. "I didn't want to burden you with all of this, but now that you know, you have to understand. Our father, he wasn't just a businessman. He was involved in things that went far beyond the tech world. He was powerful, but he had enemies, and that's why he kept us apart. He wanted to protect us, but in doing so, he created a distance that can never be undone." Elon nodded slowly. He had always known there were dark corners to his family's history, but this was far beyond what he had imagined. Still, there was something in her eyes, a trust, a sincerity, that made him believe that she wasn't just telling him a story. She was offering him a piece of his life he'd never seen before. "So, what now?" Elon asked. "What's our next step?" She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "We work together. We uncover the full truth. And then, we decide what to do with it. The world deserves to know, but we need to be careful. There are people who would do anything to keep this hidden." Elon stared at the pendant, the weight of his newfound reality settling into his chest. "I don't know where to begin," he said, half to himself. The cashier's eyes softened. "We start here, with me." As the conversation deepened, Elon felt a strange sense of connection growing between him and the woman in front of him, his sister. Despite the shocking revelations and the weight of the situation, there was something calming in the way she spoke. It was as if she had been waiting for this moment as much as he had. "You said you've been looking for me for years," Elon said, his voice growing quieter. "But why now? Why come forward now that I'm this far into everything? Why not earlier?" Her gaze flickered down to the counter, and for a moment she didn't speak. Elon waited, his patience thinning, but he understood her hesitation. "Because, Elon," she said, her voice steady now, "I was waiting for you to be ready. You had to reach a point where you would listen. You had to be open to the truth. I couldn't force you to see it." Elon's mind struggled to grasp her words. It was strange, this bond they had formed so quickly, this understanding that they were now bound by something much greater than blood. But it was more than that. There was an unspoken recognition between them. They were in this together. For the first time in a long while, Elon felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. Hope that perhaps, just perhaps, this whole tangled mess could lead to something good, something fulfilling. The barista placed their coffees in front of them. The comforting aroma of roasted beans, a reminder that life, for now, had slowed down. "I'm ready," Elon said, meeting her gaze. "Whatever it takes. Let's figure this out together." The cafe around them buzzed with the usual hum of quiet conversations, but for Elon and his half-sister, the world had shrunk to a small table in the corner where their shared history was slowly unfolding. She smiled faintly at him, her eyes warm, but there was still a deep sadness there. "You don't know how long I've wanted to say that," she said quietly. "I didn't know how you'd react, or if you'd even believe me. I never thought I'd get to this point." Elon took a long sip from his coffee, the bitter warmth grounding him. "You should have trusted that I'd believe you. I might be a lot of things, but I'm not someone who runs away from the truth." She nodded, the smile growing a little wider. "Maybe. But you've spent so much of your life looking at the stars that you couldn't see the truth right in front of you." Elon looked down at the pendant again, the weight of it suddenly feeling more like a promise than a burden. "We have a lot to uncover," he said thoughtfully. "But maybe we don't have to do it alone. Maybe this is the beginning of something bigger than both of us." She raised an eyebrow. "You mean you're willing to work with me?" "Not just work with you," Elon said with a grin, the first real smile he'd shown in hours. "I'm in this for the long haul. Family's family, even if it's a bit complicated." The two shared a quiet laugh, and for the first time since the conversation began, it felt like they were no longer strangers, but allies. It was an unexpected turn, but one that felt right. They had a long road ahead, but in that small cafe, everything seemed possible. As the conversation continued, Elon and his half-sister began to form a plan. They would start with the family records, dig through the old files, the forgotten documents, and the connections that had been kept secret for far too long. They would work together to piece together their father's legacy, and in doing so, perhaps find a way to redeem the secrets that had weighed down their family for so long. "We start by tracing his steps," she said, now more confident in their direction. "His business dealings, the people he knew. But we also need to understand what he really wanted for us, what he really wanted for the family. That's the key to understanding everything." Elon nodded, his mind already spinning with the possibilities. The future seemed uncertain, but one thing was clear: they would face it together. "And after all of this is over?" Elon asked. His sister paused, her eyes distant for a moment before they settled on him. "After that, we create our own story. We write our own legacy. Together." Elon smiled, a deep, genuine smile that he hadn't given in a long time. The tension, the uncertainty that had clouded his life began to dissipate, replaced by something simpler, something more authentic. It wasn't the life he had imagined. It was better. By the time Elon finished his coffee, the world outside the cafe had already moved on. The bustling streets were full of people going about their day, unaware of the monumental shift that had taken place in that little corner of the cafe. Elon looked at his sister, his partner in this newfound journey. There was a sense of peace now, a shared understanding between them that hadn't existed before. They weren't just two people sitting in a cafe. They were family, united in a purpose that went beyond blood. The past was behind them, but the future was wide open. As Elon stood up from the table, he reached for his sister's hand, his grip firm but gentle. "Let's go rewrite history." Together, they walked out of the cafe and into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next. Whatever happened, they knew one thing for sure: this was just the beginning of something beautiful.